How we doing, guys? It is Mr. Striz. And today's LEQs explain the role of the cell membrane as a highly selective barrier. So we've been talking about the cell membrane, and remember that cell membrane is that outer layer of the cell that protects it from the outside, and it only lets certain things come in. And we're going to look at a couple different ways that molecules can actually move through them. So as you see here, you have that paper, and at the top it has that movement of small molecules. So you have that top layer there, the movement of small molecules. The two ways that movement of small molecules can occur. The first one is from a low to high concentration. So you go from a low amount to a higher amount through that cell membrane there. And the other way is from high to low concentration. So just the opposite, from going a higher amount to a lower amount. And we'll take a look at those throughout the video, but the first one we're going to be looking at is over here from the high to low concentration. Alright, so looking from that low to high concentration, the only one you have to worry about that works from low to high concentration is active transport. Now, what active transport is, it's the movement of molecules from a low to high concentration where energy, or ATP, is required. ATP is just energy itself. So for those molecules to move through that cell membrane, it needs energy to help itself to get through it. And that's the only type of transport that needs energy, is that active transport. So just think of active, like if you're being active, running, whatever, walking, playing some sport, you're using energy, or ATP. And kind of a picture to go with it here. So as you see here in this picture up here above, active transport, first off, you only got two here, so it's going from a low amount to a high amount. But to get through that, like I said, ATP is required, or energy is required to move through the cell membrane, there for active transport, from going from a low to high concentration there. Now we'll go back and we'll look at the other side of this little graphic organizer when we talk about high to low concentrations. So as you notice here, we're on that left-hand side now from high to low concentration. So it's moving from a higher amount into a lesser amount. And there's two types, and the first one is passive transport. So what passive transport is, it's transport that does not require energy, or ATP. So it's the opposite there of active transport, where active required ATP or energy, passive transport does not. And we're going to look at three different types of passive transport. That first one is going to be diffusion. So what diffusion is, it's small or uncharged molecules entering and leaving the cell. So think of this like when you spray your perfume. Alright, it diffuses across the room. Eventually, at one end of the room, you're going to be able to smell it because it's going from a high concentration and it moves across the room to a lower concentration. So that's an example there, diffusion. I also have a picture to help you out as well. So notice this picture here. You have this guy or girl dropping in dye molecules. They enter the water, and then notice diffusion occurs when these molecules start leaving or start separating. So they start going from a high concentration, there's a high concentration here, and they start separating to a lower concentration within the beaker. So that there's an example of diffusion. Or like I said, again, with that perfume or the spray, where you spray it and then eventually diffuses across the room, and then you can then smell it across from the room even though you sprayed it on the other side. Now there's also we're also moving into that second and third type of passive transport. Alright, so we looked at diffusion there, where we talked about smaller uncharged molecules entering and leaving the cell. Now underneath that, we have two other types of passive transport. That first type is osmosis. Osmosis is the movement of water only across a it's the movement of water only across a membrane. So osmosis is just, it can only be water. Alright, so that's a way to remember osmosis, that it can only be water. Now, the other type is facilitated diffusion. And what facilitated diffusion is the movement of molecules with help from proteins. So with facilitated diffusion, these molecules need help, and they get that help from proteins. And I kind of got a picture there to help you out with that one. Alright, so notice this picture here, and it gives an example of facilitated diffusion. So notice, once again, you're moving from a high concentration to a low concentration inside the cell. But it has these proteins here that actually help the molecules move. So that's facilitated diffusion right there, where it's moving once again from a high to low concentration, but it has these proteins that help it actually move through the cell membrane there. Alright, so we're moving to osmosis, and there's actually three different types of solutions that you can have with osmosis, and we're going to take a look at those three. So the first type of solution is a hypotonic solution. So that's a solution that contains higher percentage of water than the cell. So there's a higher percentage of the solution in the water than it is in the cell itself. Now the second type is hypertonic solution. So there's more water inside the cell than outside the cell. And the last one is isotonic solution. Isotonic solution is a solution that has equal amount of water as the cell. Now notice this picture here. We got isotonic, hypotonic, and hypertonic. So remember, we talked about hypertonic having more percentage outside the cell. So that's why you only have 3 salt concentration, where you have 6 here. So 6 here and 3 here. So that's hypotonic. So remember, there's more outside than inside the cell itself. Hypotonic. Remember, hypotonic is when there's more inside. That's why this cell is actually bigger than there is outside. So hypertonic is there's more water in than there is outside of the cell. And then isotonic, remember, there's equal amounts there of water both in and then out of the cell as well. So that sums our video up for today. This is Mr. Striz signing out.